In this chapter, we're going to explore how to add images to your website pages. Now, of course, images are going to brighten things up, but they're also going to convey lots of information for the content that you're providing. So let's get started by opening up our Tryout Images page. I've got that open in the Chapter 4 folder for my working files, and I'll just double-click it to bring it up in the browser. You can see that so far, we've just got some text on the page, formatted into some paragraphs, and we'll go ahead and open that into our text application as well, so we can edit it. The main tag that we'll use for inserting images is the IMG tag. For starters, I'm going to add one right at the beginning of this first paragraph. We can add images right alongside the text in line with it by just adding that image tag right on in. I'll start it off with IMG, and this is going to be another tag that, for one, is empty, so we're not going to have any contents or any closing tag, and it's also a tag that has a required attribute in order for it to function. The main attribute that we're looking at for an image tag is the source attribute, or SRC. Now I'll set up an equal sign after that, and some quotes, and a self-closing tag. And then let's go and add in something for our source for the image. To fill in the attribute, we need to add an image that we want to have added to the page. And what we're going to do with the source attribute is we're going to specify a path to that image, just like we did in the link files in the last chapter. Now I've got some images that we can work with loaded into my Chapter 4 folder. So let's go down and take a look at what we can put in. Here's our images folder, and we've got several JPEGs and a PNG file down here that we can work with. I'm just going to pick one out. I want the Chinatown JPEG, and I'm just going to add that in. Now if we need a path to this image, we're going to use relative paths because we're already working on our web pages. And the page that I'm working on is the Tryout Images HTML, which is in this main folder. So our path is going to have to include the images folder and the name of the file itself. So let's go up and add that. First off, the folder is named images, and I'll need a slash at the end of that so that our server knows to go inside the folder, and then we just add the file name chinatown.jpg. Now let's save our changes, and let's go out and see what it looks like on the page. You can see that my image appears right up here at the top, and it's just dropped in the exact place that we put it inside the text. Now let's take a look at that. Images are placed in line, and what I did is I put this as the first item inside this paragraph. You'll notice that the image appears right before the text starts up, and there's really not much space except the normal one space that we see between items inside of our web pages. Now, if I move the image tag around, I can put it in line with whatever elements we want to work with. Let me just grab that tag, and I'll move it down inside paragraph itself. Now it's right in front of the word said. So let's save that change, and then we'll see how that affects our page. Now you can see that the image is indeed placed right before that word, but you'll also notice that it's kind of disrupted the paragraph because it's acting like a big piece of text in line with the rest of the text that we see. I don't have to put the image tag inside of a paragraph either. Let me grab it while I still have it selected, and I'll put it down here in between the two paragraphs. We'll click Save again, and see how that looks. Now you can see each one of my paragraphs in whole, and the image is dropped right in between them. And then, of course, the next text block flows after it. Now, we've got the basics, and we can get images to appear on the page, but there are a couple additional attributes that you'll want to use with your image tags. So let's go back to our document, and let's try these out. Now, the first one is an alternate text attribute, and we type this attribute as alt. So let me go down to my Chinatown image here, and we'll just add an alt attribute. Now, as you can see, we set it up just like we do other attributes. This attribute is specifically designed to provide alternate text that describes the image. Now, we're thinking about a couple of main points here. If your user downloads the page and somehow misses the image, you want them to know what they missed. And probably more importantly, when we talk about accessibility and making our page content accessible to people with disabilities, if you're using a screen reader program to browse the web, you'll want to know what you missed in the image as well, especially if there was some important information there. And that's what we put in the alt tag. So I'm going to go to this one, and I'm going to put in a small description that just says, a street scene in Chinatown. Now, normally we won't see this alt tag unless you are using a screen reader or you've got images turned off. But I would still like to test it and try it out in the browser. So let's set up a little scenario. One reason that a user might not be able to download your image is that you have the wrong link for it. Now I'll just simulate that by adding the character 2 to the end of the Chinatown image. Of course, we don't have a JPEG called Chinatown 2, so we won't have one to upload into the browser. Let's save that change, and we'll just go back out to our browser and refresh the page. Now you can see that the image has disappeared because it wasn't able to download it, and you can see that a street scene in Chinatown, our alt text, appears in place of the image. And that's exactly the way it'll work for anybody who has a browser that can't see this image as well.